Stiamo questa mattina con Muri del Suono. Io sono Giovanna Tinunin. Ieri sera sono passati 2 film che andavano a formare appunto la selezione di quest'anno. Iniziamo a parlare subito, visto che i tempi sono anche un pochino stretti, con l'autore del secondo film che è passato ieri sera, Igor Stoimenov, a cui do il benvenuto. Sono molto felice che ci abbia consentito di presentarvi il suo film. Il suo film si chiama Bijelo Dugme e se l'avete visto sapete che è la storia di una delle band, forse la band rock più famosa dell'ex Jugoslavia. Dimmi quando mi devo fermare. Ecco, è un documentario musicale a tutti gli effetti, nel senso che rispetta tutti i canoni, la storia della band, il suo sviluppo, il successo, il rapporto con i fan, quindi è veramente un documentario musicale nel senso più autentico del termine. Però io l'ho scelto per un altro motivo in realtà, oltre al fatto che mi è piaciuto molto come film musicale, ma l'ho scelto anche perché l'autore, mi ha colpito una dichiarazione dell'autore che ha dichiarato che per lui questo era un film politico. Quindi io vorrei partire proprio da questo, cosa intendeva dicendo che per lui Bijelo Dugme è un film politico.
So, hello everybody. This morning we start the meetings with the authors of the section Walls of Sound. It's the 4th stage of this section devoted to cinema and music, curated by Giovanna Tinunin. Yesterday night we saw 2 films. One was Freak Beat and the second one was Bijelo Dugme, White Button. And we have here with us the author of this film, Igor Stoimenov. And so the first question is, this film, which by the way was very successful yesterday night, we have to say, is classic and real and authentic documentary music, because it follows the creation and the story of this rock band, which in the 70s in former Yugoslavia was extremely successful, the Bijelo Dugme. And so the film is following all the stages of the band, the creation, the relationship with the fans, the success, the problems, and the living together, etc. But the curator of the section chose it not only because it's a wonderful film and she liked it very, very much, but also because she was struck and impressed by a line, a sentence in the end, I think, of the documentary, when the film director says that this is a political movie. So could you comment on that?
First of all, thank you very much for last night projection. I was really surprised with the crowd and everything there. Thank you again. So, Bijelo Dugme, actually, White Button, that was a huge challenge for me. On the one side, Bijelo Dugme was probably the second biggest symbol of Yugoslavia. First was, of course, Tito, and the second one was Bijelo Dugme. Of course, the third one was Trieste, because we bought everything here in Trieste, but I spoke about it last night. And it's very funny that, I didn't say that last night, but the costume design you saw in the movie is like, most of the things we have bought here in Trieste, all these like jeans and sunglasses and everything, and that's very funny. But let's back on the serious side. Bijelo Dugme was more than a rock and roll band in Yugoslavia. That's because Yugoslavia was not like a normal country like any other country. So on the other side you had like all these like Western countries. On the other side, so on the left side you had like all these like communist countries. And Tito's Yugoslavia was some kind of mishmash of those two systems. And Bijelo Dugme was also a mishmash of those two systems. Today, on the artistic side, today you have like world music, which is like very popular, and Goran Bregović, the leader of Bijelo Dugme, is one of the biggest stars in world music. But Bijelo Dugme was the first band who started with these like folk influences in rock and roll. And you got Led Zeppelin there with Bijelo Dugme, but every second or third song got some kind of Serbian or Macedonian or like I don't know, Albanian influence in that, Albanian folk music. I think that today's like that's very popular, but back in 70s, and I know when I was young, it was a huge critique toward Bijelo Dugme because of that. They call them peasant rock and roll. They call them, like you go to the village and don't do it. And that was like on the one level very important for their tremendous success. On the other side, there is the second level of this movie, not only rock and roll level with drugs, with scandals, with like great songs, with huge concerts for 100,000 people, etc. On the other side is like this political level. If you got something that tremendously success as Bijelo Dugme was in Yugoslavia, you can compare this like with success of I don't know, Justin Bieber today among teenage people, you know. They were like role model for everything, really role model for everything, and a whole new generation in Yugoslavia back in '70s. That was like a great time. That was like a very successful time economically, politically, and that was like totally. They opened everything in Yugoslavia back in '70s, like. Huge cultural centers were opening everywhere. Everything was prepared to grow up. And Bijelo Dugme was, I don't know, it has to happen. Bijelo Dugme or something else, but it was time to happen. As it was time in the United States to happen, like I don't know. Chuck Berry or Jimi Hendrix or Beatles and Rolling Stones in England, and on the other level, that's the time of '70s where Bijelo Dugme was created. And it's very important because just like a year or two before, we had like first students demonstration in Belgrade, and that's the reason they opened all these like youth students or centers, and that was some kind of basis to create pop culture in Yugoslavia. And that was, on the other side, great thing, because it's open mind of the people, and people started to think like artistically, musically, and also they started to think politically. And all these people, they created pop culture in Yugoslavia back in '70s, was the people who disintegrated Yugoslavia in late '80s. And that's very important, because the beginning of Bijelo Dugme is directly at the moment when Yugoslavia got the constitution back in 1973. This is the constitution on which basis Yugoslavia fell apart at 1989. Bijelo Dugme fell apart at 1989. That was the 14th Congress of Yugoslavian Communist Party, and at this Congress of Yugoslavian Communist Party, Yugoslavia started to falling apart. And that's very, very important, and you can see through the career of Bijelo Dugme the whole process, the whole process of Yugoslavia's breaking, falling apart, and as you see last night in the movie, you got like two different parts of the movie. Happy '70s and like '80s, which were like full of economic crisis, full of political crisis, full of nationalism, full of everything, and even bands started to falling apart, losing one singer, second singer, and all the time I was trying to, I didn't have to try, that was like naturally, that was normally to make this kind of connection between politics in Yugoslavia and Bijelo Dugme. And on the third level, that's very important, and that's the reason that put me into this idea to make these movies, because I was born in the time when Bijelo Dugme was born, and I left my parents' house when Bijelo Dugme fell apart. And that's very important, because this movie on the third level is actually the whole I dedicated it to myself, to my first 17, 18 years of my life, and like first 10 years of my life were like, you know, like elementary school, my parents' childhood, beautiful, everything, and then puberty came, and also puberty came in Bijelo Dugme, and I also got all these problems like that Bijelo Dugme had in the movie. So that's it. Those are three levels of this movie I was thinking to tell you about.
Time to translate.
Sì. Come
No, dovresti usare il microfono,
altrimenti non si sente.
Ma però con voce impostata.
Grazie.
Igor, stravo. Parlo in inglese o in
Come
italiano?
vuoi? Come vuoi tu?
To speak English, if my colleague here. Igor, think. I'm a songwriter. Once upon a time, I was a rocker, a man, a grandfather. Anyway, Bijelo Dugme, I met them in the late 60s and the early 70s here in Trieste. And they created, I think, through music, a great contact between Italian musicians, Slovene musicians, Yugoslavian musicians. Because in the late 60s, in the early 70s, there were still remains of the war of the 40s, of the 50s. Yugoslavi, Italiani, we debate each other. Through music, they created a school, a real school of great musicians here in Trieste through music. Brega, that's a close friend of mine, has got my own guitar. He said, okay, I'm gonna get it the day after tomorrow. Never seen it before. That's all. Music is the contact. Igor, go ahead.
When it happens, it happens. That's great. You know, like there is no many things in the world that they got everything settled down at the beginning. And when Bijelo Dugme started, because I'm not some like a Greek says panegyric, like Roman says panegyric of Bijelo Dugme. I've got a lot of critics to say about Bijelo Dugme, but like in early 70s they were very important, very important. Probably the most important thing ever happened to Eastern Europe, for example. It's very important. I just like the little touch, this influence that pop culture of ex-Yugoslavia had all over Eastern Europe. That's very important. That was some kind of window to the all Eastern European countries to the West, and that's very all these like popular music singers from Yugoslavia back in 50s, 60s were very important in Russia, in Bulgaria, Romania, and some TV series from Serbia. I don't want to talk about movies like partisan movies in Yugoslavia, which were like Western movies, and they're like tremendously popular in China, in Russia, all over these countries, which got like this like totally closed view of to everything, and we have to have, like I'm talking about ex-Yugoslavian people, to be proud of 60s, 70s, 50s, 60s and 70s, especially 60s and 70s, and that's the reason I made this movie. And thank you very much that you said that for this band and for everything like that, because this band helped everything else in Yugoslavia. Because on the critique of this band grew up another very important movement in Yugoslavia. That was a new wave. That's like new wave is like a movement of it's some kind of new wave in England or Germany or France. It was like very important music movement in not only in music, in film, art, whatever movement in Yugoslavia in the late 70s, and they grew up on Bijelo Dugme, but they hated Bijelo Dugme, and that's very important. It's always like second. Bijelo Dugme had long hair, they all had like short hair. Bijelo Dugme had like, I don't know, like all these glam moments. They were like very modest. They were they were like punkers or wearing suits, and everything was like okay. And then was after that the third level, fourth level, and after that everything fell apart.
Elena, for doing that.